Hello all, Jamie Rodgers here for Craftmania, and today we are bringing you a new look at this week's die of the week. Now, if you haven't joined us here before on our channel, please make sure that you hit subscribe and tap the bell to be notified of all of our future videos. On our Craftmania channel, we like to bring you incredible special offers as well as inspiration to hopefully help you with your crafting journey. Now, this week we are looking at the Oslo die set by Sue Wilson, and anytime we bring you a die of the week, you know there's going to be a fantastic offer, and this week is no different. In this die set, we received 6 dies, giving us so many options. Honestly, it's ridiculous. The amount of ways we can cut in, cut out, layer, endless. We'll talk through them when I show you the dies shortly, and of course you'll get to see lots of samples showing how we can create these effects as well. But 6 different dies in this one set, giving you loads of variation. The die set should be £16.50, that's its recommended retail price, but of course it's a die of the week, so we like to bring you incredible offers. This week's no different. This one is only £7.50. Now, if you live within the UK, that also means you qualify for free U.K P&P. So £7.50 is going to get this delivered to you free of charge as such. No P&P charges. If you live internationally, then of course you can order. Sadly, we can't do free international P&P, but what we do is cap it at £10. So the most you'll pay to have this sent to you anywhere in the world is £10. And of course, it doesn't just have to be one die. It could be any combination of the 10,000 items we carry here at Craftmania. But the most your P&P will be is £10. If we find it lower than that, then we actually refund the difference for you. If it costs more than £10, then here at Craftmania, we pay that for you. It doesn't matter whether we're looking at our free over £5 UK P&P or our international P&P capped at £10. Here at Craftmania, we like to try and carry the costs for you where possible to keep it as low as possible so that you've got more pennies to spend on crafty goodies. And then of course we like to bring you bargains as well, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Is trying to stretch your crafty budget as far as we can to give you the most goodies at the best prices, delivered as quickly and as inexpensively as we possibly can. Now, when we get on to talking about this die, if you fall in love with this die or any of the bits and bobs I'm going to be sharing with you on the cards I've got to share today, then head on to the website www.craftmaniacrafts.com. When you land on the website, you will see a menu bar either going across the screen or on the drop down menu if you're on a mobile device. Either one of them will say on the little sections, die of the week. If you give that a little click and head on through, you'll see little tabs for every single die of the week we have done this year. Now, many of them have sold out because, of course, when we're looking at such fantastic offers, they don't last forever. So be warned with that, especially when we're looking at today's one. But of course, if there is any stock remaining, they're still on them pages, and you might like to go back and have a little look at those, possibly add some of the previous ones to your order as well. Especially last week's, the thank you one, and I've got the dies here today to show those to you, because last week I'd lost them. I'd hung them on a magnetic board in my room and then couldn't find them for love nor money. I should have known I'd been organised, but I didn't, but I found them. So I'll show you theirs as well. But that's a lovely one to add in, and when we get to looking at this week's die, I think you might see how you could layer the two together or sort of share that theme throughout. So looking back to previous ones is a great idea too. But of course, click this week's, which is Oslo. It will take you through and you will see all of the items used laid out on one page for you. So you don't have to search around the whole website to find the items you would like. So with no further ado, let's delve on in and actually have a little look at this die set, shall we? So as I mentioned, 6 dies in this set. That really does give you endless options. So let's look at the actual dies. First of all, we have our outside edge. Now, this is very important, and I love the way Sue does this, because of giving you a separate outside edge to your panels means that we can cut apertures into our cardstock and sink them within them. It means that our next edge in our sort of filigree panel, because it doesn't have this attached, means that we can cut that into our cardstock and it can stay there. It also means that if we do nest the two together, we can cut it out, but it also then means that you can cut this one out as a coloured panel maybe and place it underneath that so that you've got a different colour shining through from underneath, filling in the apertures that your filigree panel is going to create. So it just gives you so much versatility really, and so many options that you can create with in so many different ways. Now, we've had a little look already at the first one. Moving on to our second one, our filigree panel. So as mentioned, no outside edge, no inside edge, meaning this one's going to cut in and stay in your cardstock, of course, unless we use it with our outside edges. And of course, coming up are inside edges. Now, inside edges to this one, we've got a few options for you. We've got two, to be precise, different, really cool sort of, I don't even know what to call this shape. It's sort of an oval, but it's also a rectangle. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's beautiful. And I really, really like it. I love these sort of cut-in corner details that are coming in around it. Reminds me of like fancy plaques, which I think is really lovely. Now, giving you two options to these, this means that you can bring these in, you can nest them in here, you can cut that out as a frame. Now, that's great. But what's quite novel is giving you a second size down, because if you've cut that open, and you've got that lovely frame there, maybe you wish to just take this one, cut that out of another piece of card. Maybe you'd like to team it with the outside one or not, the choice is yours, but it means you can then have a drop shadow frame on the inside of this that's going to step down. And I really love that. You'll see that when we get onto the samples. It might make a bit more sense, but it gives you that option. Also, having these as separates means that we can leave this as a solid panel. It also then means, of course, that we could cut these out as solids and layer them on top. So again, we can build up like a pyramid and create different effects, or we can cut in an invertage as such. So again, lots and lots of spectrum for playing around here, just for the 4 dies that we've covered already. Now, Sue hasn't left it there. Sue has bought you another filigree panel. Again, no outside edge, no inside edge, meaning that you can choose whether you cut this out using these outside edges. And again, you can choose to have the thinner frame, you could have the wider frame, or of course, we can pop this into the insert of that panel and use it in that way instead. Then on top of that, Sue has given you this little diamond that fits on the inside of this one. So again, you can cut that out. You could remove these ones. You could cut this out of these ones instead. So just hopefully you're getting the idea. Your interchangeability is off the charts. 6 different dies giving you such lovely shapes, variation, and options to work with to create so many different styles. Now we could do sort of a billboard size panel showing you, a board showing you all of the different options for these. But of course that might be a little bit tricky to do. So instead we're going to make a few cards and share these with you instead to hopefully give you some ideas. Now let's bring this first one in. So this is showing you the outside edge without the middles placed in them, cutting out of Decadent Ivory. The background panel has been cut just using that outside edge, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Giving you this outside die on its own means we could cut that out of pink and place it underneath this layer. Works brilliantly. Then we've brought in the next layer down, cut that one from pink, then the next layer down, cut that from pink, and then again with that next layer, nesting inside the filigree panel, cutting that from ivory, so we could then layer the two together. Then adding the diamond on top, just cut out of pink again. So this really shows you how you can go to town playing around, going between having the filigree edges and having the plain edges, and yo-yoing between what ways you're wanting to build them up. Now I've foam padded mine together, so we've got quite a bit of depth going on here, but you absolutely don't have to if you don't want to. Now butterflies, I believe every card I'm going to show you has used one of our elegant butterfly dies. I really went on a bit of a butterfly theme with this collection. It certainly doesn't have to be. This die set could come out for Christmas, Easter, Valentine's. Whatever you're working on, this one is going to work for you because it's such a generalised traditional design that it's going to fit to any scope. Now in the background here you will see I've used one of my Jamie Rodgers craft stencils and I have embossed it using a rubber mat through my machine. I'm desperately trying to remember, I believe this one is called Floral Delight, but it's on that page I mentioned earlier for you. We also have the happy birthday sentiment being used on the Thinking of You banner, and you'll also notice I've used several of my squares going through here. So we've got the plain squares, we have got the stitched square, we've got the plain, then the stitched inside the decollage square. So again, you've probably seen these, but we've brought out 5 different nesting dies, all in squares, that all interchange, so you can choose where to use your stitch dies, whether they are separate on your panels, on your cards, whether they are going into your plain dies, your decollage dies, your postage edge dies. Doesn't matter, everything interchanges, and this is just one of the cards where I'm getting to share that with you. And it just means that you get these really lovely details and knowing that everything coordinates between them. Moving on to card number 2, let's have a little look at this one. So a lot of pink going on this week. I really found I was radiating towards butterflies and pink. I've got no idea why, but hopefully you'll agree they're quite pretty. So this time, taking our scallop squares, adding in our pierce detail, and then using that filigree panel. So just taking this part, cutting that into that middle of the square, knowing that this is going to stay in place and create that effect. Then bringing in the next 2 layers, and cutting these, the largest from pink, the smaller one from white, and layering them up in the middle here. Then on top of that, again, bringing in the butterfly. I told you lots of butterflies this week. So we've added on the butterfly, we've then brought in the cosmos flower and added that on, and our lovely cosmos leaves. And again, you're seeing lots of those squares being used throughout here. And the bit I love with the pierced detail is you can take it and cut it directly into your card. So if you don't wish to have it inside one of the nested shapes, use it directly onto your card blanket. It gives you that lovely effect. I love that. It just opens up so many new worlds, and it means then that you can take that pierced detail and run it through your layers. But like the pink one, you might not want to include it on every layer. That might get a bit heavy, so choose to leave it out if you prefer. It just works for me. I find that a really lovely way to play with them. Then moving on, so again, you're going to see a lot of pink and white, you're going to see a lot of blue and white this week. This one's a different idea. So we're going to start off by cutting this panel out, the white one. So for this one, I have used 3 dies. I've used the filigree panel, the outside edge, and the first layer of our lovely sort of, I don't know what to call that, fancy shape. Let's call it fancy shape. Cut that out of white, and then taking this layer, our fancy shape, I've placed that inside the blue square and cut that out. And that's given me this aperture that I've then taken the white cut and put round over the top. So this frame is sat on top of the blue one, creating that aperture. I've then used this size down, so the next size down of the fancy shape, cut that from blue and placed that in as a drop shadow. I've then taken my filigree panel with the diamond on the inside, cut that out of a square and placed that in white and placed that on the next layer down. I've then used just the diamond and I've cut that out of a square in the centre and out of blue, and then I've placed that as the next layer down. So basically each layer down we're just taking away a die as such to create this multi-layered effect. Really easy to do, very delicate to do, and although I mentioned in a square, it doesn't have to be the same size square. As you go down your layers, nobody's going to know if they're full squares or not, so it can literally just be smaller panels. Especially when you're doing bits like this, you could even be using your outside edge. You don't have to have it central because this part isn't going to be seen. You can move that around, but it's a great way to trim it out and give you a guidance of where you are, and then you can use that to sort of create your layers. On the top, we've got a butterfly, we've got our lovely cosmos flower again. This time I've used a Sizex die, the reef die, to actually create the foliage because I wanted it really arced round, coming up round the Oslo die, and I felt that one worked quite nicely. You'll also notice again I've gone for stitch details, I've gone for pierced details, we've got plain squares and we've got fluted squares. So again, working for all of those different squares and playing around with different options to create different effects. Then moving on, different idea for you again, a bit more blue and white. I love this. This is our seashell blue and our polar white, and it's a colour combo I really like. I also really love our rose petal pink, whether that's with the polar white or the decadent ivory. These are all our elite card stocks by Rodgers Crafts, and I just love working with these shades. So on to this one, slightly different idea again. This time we have taken this panel, so our larger fancy panel, and we've cut that from white, and we've done that 3 times. We've then taken our filigree panel in the next size down fancy shape with the diamond, and suddenly I feel like I'm playing Cluedo. That was very much in the dining room, wasn't it, with the candlestick, so I apologise. But it's those 3 nested together, cut from cut from blue, layered on top of the white cuts here. So just that part on top of those to create these 3 panels. In the background, I've taken our filigree panel and I've cut that once again into our square, knowing it's going to stay in place just to create this sort of effect running around the tops and the bottoms. I knew I wasn't going to be seeing the sides because I was going to bring in these 2 panels over them, but I really like that little filigree sort of flourish running across the tops and the bottoms. I thought that was quite fun. Now on the squares, I've also used 3 of the pierced lines to create this effect inside the fluted edge, then used the pierced line inside the plain edge squares to build up my layers. I've brought in the cosmos leaves, the cosmos flower, and once again the elegant butterfly. Very similar pieces that I've used throughout these cards. Lots of butterflies, lots of cosmoses, lots of cosmos leaves, but I felt that this was quite a pretty way to build up and work with our Oslo die set. Now, one of the smallest cards I've probably made in a long time is this one. I don't make many small cards, and I've really got to. I go in little fits and fads of doing this, but it's few and far between. But this one has been responded to really well on our Facebook page. So many people fell in love with this. And it's such a dinky, cute little card that's so easy to do. I'm trying to remember, I think this is 5 inches as a card size goes, but it is genuinely quite tiny. But that's what I wanted to do. So I've used one of our card blanks. I've used the stitched edge die to go over the top of it to add in that detail running around the side of it. I've used our plain squares, again with a stitch detail to match in. And then I've brought in Oslo. So again, for this one, we have used the filigree edge, the outer edge, the first one of the fancy panels, and we have cut that out of white. I've then removed the filigree edge and used these two together and cut that out of the blue and laid the white one on top of the blue one to create this frame. I've then cut another one of these from blue to sink underneath it so I could foam pad on that frame. And then I've used the next size down in the fancy panel, cut that out of white and foam padded it into the middle. So I've just created this frame with like this halo effect as such, this inlay that's created around the edges. Really easy to do, but very effective and quite fun to play with. And then built up on top using my butterfly instead. Now, of course, this could be done as a multi-card or multi-fold card, and you could stamp on some of these panels, you could add flowers around them. This could be like a really cool concertina album if you prefer making like little mini brag books and bits, but it's the perfect frame to work with. As a scrapbook art, I also love this for actually using in an album as frames because it's the right size to put photos into, and I think that works really nicely. Then moving on to our next one. So we're back to the pink and white this time. Again, slightly different idea hopefully for you. Taken some of the fluted squares, I've added in the stitch squares, and then I've taken this panel and I've cut that into it with the next size down of the fancy die to cut open the aperture. I've then cut the square again and placed that underneath, so again in white, so I've got it sunk down. I've also cut one of the pink layers, so I've cut this out, so I've got a square, and I've placed this on, cut that out, and then lined that up underneath so that the pink shows through in the apertures of the frame. Hopefully that made sense. I feel like that was probably my most confusing explanation, but hopefully it made sense. But it gives you the pink showing through from underneath. Then I've sunk the butterfly in underneath there, and I've added on the cosmos flower and the cosmos leaves just to build up again. But it's showing you how you can really take that, you can cut this open or leave it as a solid depending on where you wish to go with it. You can take that pink layer and sink it below, or you can stick it below, and that really again gives you a different effect. Just looking at how that filigree looks between having that depth between the foam pad and then having it glued right against it really creates such different effects because you've got that shadow coming into play that is of course created by the depth here, which we lose on this one. I've got really good lighting in here that's sort of hitting this from every angle, but still you get that depth, you get that shadow, it works really nicely. So in most lights that's going to show up even better than you're seeing it here because we sort of firelight at every angle to make sure you can see everything really clearly. But of course on a mantelpiece you're going to get them shades of pink coming through that are created by that drop shadow as such. Then on to our last card. So this one, another little butterfly one for you. I think actually this was one of the first cards I did for this week's Die of the Week. But again, playing with our different layers. So bringing in our filigree panel, bringing in our outside edge, cutting those from white, then cutting the back panel from our night sky navy and sticking the two together. Then using our next size down of our fancy one, cutting that in night sky navy, padding that on, then cutting the next one down in night sky navy, then again in white, but this time with the filigree panel and the diamond in the middle, and sticking this onto the night sky navy one, and then foam padding all three together. I've then added on the butterfly to the top here, and then again through the layers we've got the stitch details and we've got the plain squares and the scallop squares, and again you'll see the pierced details and the scallops running through on these layers too. For the stencil, I've used our kaleidoscope butterfly and I've put it through my machine and embossed it. I've then used a stipple brush with a white ink pad and just gone over the top and lightly stippled to give quite texture and depth over the top of the butterflies. But hopefully looks quite nice. It just gives it a slightly different style. I was tempted to add a sentiment to this card, but I felt that although there's quite a bit of room here, it just looked a bit heavy, but you could possibly stamp a smaller sentiment on there if you wanted to bring in a little word in, or we could get rid of the butterfly and run the sentiment from the middle maybe, or tuck the sentiment coming out on a little panel underneath one of these layers. There's lots of different ideas for you, but hopefully you'll agree that's quite an easy one to build up and create. And that completes our 7 samples for this week, and of course our die of the week. Now our Oslo die, as I mentioned earlier, is on offer. It's only £7.50. it should be £16.50. So there's a huge saving on this one. And if you would like to get hold of it, then pop onto the website www.craftmaniacrafts.com, and on there you will be able to find the die of the week section, and of course see all of the items from the cardstock, the gems, all of the different bits we've been looking at. They'll all be on that page for you. And once again, if you would like to, you can of course save the images from the Oslo die set so that you've got all of these cards to refer back to. But if you have any questions, if there's anything I wasn't clear on, then let me know in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them for you. But of course, we're here to try and help where we can. If you're not into YouTube and you're not a YouTube member, then of course you can comment on the cards as they appear on our Facebook page, which is Craftmania again, throughout the week at 2 p.m. Just pop your comments in there and I'll do my very best to answer them for you. Thank you very much for watching today. If you do get hold of the Oslo die and you'd like to share with us what you create, then I would love to see that as well. Pop onto our group, Create with Craftmania and Jamie Rodgers, and you can share with us what you've been creating, which I absolutely love to see. I often say this is my favourite part of the job. It's not what I create, not what I design, not what I do, but seeing what you do with what we bring you. Because to me, that's where all the creativity sort of springs to life and comes to life. So make sure if you know, not everyone likes to share, do they? And I get it, it can be tricky. Our group is lovely. They're such a supportive group. Our design team members are in there. You've got me in there. You've got Zoe in there as our admin. It's a lovely little community where you can share with us what you've been making. You can ask us questions. It's a lovely place to be. So do come and join us if you'd like to on our Facebook group. And again, if you can't find it on Facebook, on the website, there's a little tab on the menu bar that says Facebook group. If you give that a click, it takes you directly to our group. There's a couple of questions to answer, nothing taxing. It's a free group. We don't ask for anything like that. It's just what's your favourite craft brand and questions like that. And that's just honestly there to weed out people who shouldn't be in our group. And that's mostly like bots and bits like that. We try to keep our group a safe, friendly, happy environment. And it's just one of our ways of protecting our group and making sure it's a lovely craft community for you all to be in it and share with us what you're working on. So okay, enough waffling from me. I'm going to leave you in peace. But I hope you've enjoyed today's video. And don't forget to tap subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified of all of our future videos. Thank you very much for watching and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Bye for now.